in New Orleans. New Orleans. Nolans. We are not here just to wander the magnificent cities of the dead. I am on a quest for oven crypts, which are either more horrifying or less horrifying than what you're thinking. So join me, y'all. The y'all isn't really rolling off the tongue yet. I need to work on that. New Orleans cemeteries are full of these above-ground tombs because the city is at sea level and prone to flooding. You can't just bury a body in the ground in New Orleans. Do you want a soggy coffin floating down the streets? Cemeteries littered with bones. Corpses crawling with crawfish. Except that's not quite true. It's definitely part of the story, but it's not the whole story. Yes, in the early 19th century, New Orleans residents and visitors were troubled by the watery conditions in the cemetery. In 1801, Jean Pintard wrote, "Water appears on digging in any place 1 foot below the surface." And he found the wet conditions at St. Louis Cemetery No. 1, New Orleans' oldest existing cemetery, to be repugnant. Also, I wasn't joking about those crawfish. St. Louis No. 1 was basically a crawfish habitat when it was established in 1789, and Pintard had a little freak out at the idea of crawfish ravaging his dead body. Something about the crawfish eating him, and then other people eating the crawfish, and it's like a cannibalism kind of situation. Anyway, what he wanted was for his body to be buried in terra firma, solid earth, dry land. As for me, bury me in the crawfish habitat. Chomp chomp, my tiny clawed friends. So, burying people in the swampy ground wasn't great. It was hard to manage, and sometimes coffins would stick up out of the ground. With diseases like yellow fever sweeping the city, people were dying faster than they could be individually buried. There are stories of rotting corpses piling up outside the gates of the earliest cemeteries. And even with that, people continue to be buried one by one underground for many years. There are still historic cemeteries in New Orleans where people are buried underground. Sure, the ground here is moist, but bodies aren't washing away. Okay, fine, major floods and Hurricane Katrina did set coffins adrift, but that happens in a lot of places, not just New Orleans. So if flooding isn't the only reason, why all this above-ground burial? The answer is cultural and practical. New Orleans was founded in 1718. Until it was purchased by the United States in 1803, it was run by the French and the Spanish, both Catholic countries and both countries that had experience burying their dead above ground. Both France and Spain had been under Roman rule for hundreds of years and had therefore adopted Roman burial traditions. The Romans buried their dead in above-ground tombs, seeing such tombs as little temples. But like everything in life, there is status that was associated with burial, with interment. If you were wealthy, you were buried in these big above-ground tombs, but if you were poor or working class, you were buried underground in crematoria called the kitchens. Nobody wanted to be buried in the kitchens. To avoid this, Romans would form societies that would build communal mausoleums for people of lesser means to receive this proper above-ground burial. Those communal burial structures were actually columbaria, which means they had a bunch of niches for cremated remains. Fast forward to New Orleans in 1800. The Catholic Church doesn't allow for cremation. They won't allow for that until 1963. But if you can't cremate everyone and make them small and portable to fit in one above-ground tomb, what do you do with them all? Enter the oven crypts. You're probably asking yourself, with all this grand, ornate splendor, why are we focusing on this? There are things about the oven crypts that make my black little eco-death heart sing. Here at St. Louis Cemetery No. 2, we're just lousy with oven crypts. They were called fours, which is French for ovens because, well, they looked like quaint little brick bread ovens. Not because they roasted the dead. Remember, Catholic Church, no cremation. These oven crypts, or tombs, were above-ground burial chambers that were incorporated into the walls of the cemeteries. Oven crypts have arched brick ceilings. Oven crypts are typically stacked 3 to 4 high, with each chamber holding one coffined body at a time. Oven crypts are the gift that keeps on giving, and by that I mean, they're reusable. According to the rules of burial, a coffin had to remain in here for 1 year and 1 day. That's the time period that it was believed that diseases like yellow fever were no longer dangerous in the dead body. After the minimum 1 year and 1 day has passed, this is opened up. The desiccated remains are removed from the coffin is disposed of, and the remains are pushed to the back of the chamber, and the chamber's ready for a whole new coffined body. Lather, rinse, repeat. If you were lucky enough to have a freestanding family tomb, the principle was sort of similar. The body would go in the coffin, and after a certain amount of time, the bones would be pushed down in the back, falling through a shaft into a chamber below called a caveau, where you would hang out with all your other family members, which maybe wouldn't be my choice, but more of a visual learner, here's a demonstration. New Orleans was growing faster than cemeteries could keep up, so these oven crypts were a godsend. Underground burial space was limited, but with oven crypts, after the year was up, you could make room for your new eternal roommate. Whose turn is it to buy toilet paper? A tablet would often, but not always, be mounted on the outside of the oven crypt, listing everyone who had been interred inside the chamber. But sometimes it would just say something generic, like, "My husband," which covered a lot. The reason Americans love visiting New Orleans cemeteries is that they're so different than the cemeteries they have back home. Your typical American cemetery is a lawn or a park with mostly underground burials. As much as we love recycling, reusable graves are a concept that's completely foreign to Americans. Other countries in the world, not so much. Places like Belgium, Spain, Germany, Singapore, yes, you buy a burial space, but you only get 15 to 20 years to decompose in it. Once your time is up, you're out. Places in Germany, for example, if your family doesn't want to repay for your grave space, you dig down deeper in the dirt, put your bones down there, new person goes on top. But in America, it's the law that cemeteries must maintain graves into perpetuity. That is, forever.
Forever. Forever. Forever.
Cemeteries have to make the absurd promise that your grave will be yours forever and ever and ever. But New Orleans derived all kinds of benefits from breaking that promise, saving space for one. There are so many reusable oven crypts in these historic cemeteries, and rather than seeing the communal aspect as disrespectful, it actually allowed everyone the opportunity for a proper burial. Laborers, immigrants, and the working class could be buried in tombs owned by benevolent societies, like this one here. Typically large structures made up of 20 or so vaults or crypts at once. An individual could join a benevolent society, pay monthly or weekly dues that, upon their death, would ensure they got a funeral, and that their body was interred above ground in a respectful manner. I personally am all about the oven crypt. Let's bring them to every big city, putting the needs of the community over the needs of the individual. In the spirit of community, I will be eaten by crawfish. Take me, crawfish. I'm here. Come at me! This video was made with generous donations from death enthusiasts just like you.